he doesn't suspect he's going to survive it. He doesn't think he's going to live. But more importantly, if he does, will his humanity survive it? Because that's really one of the things I really love about Walt, that he's a decent human being. Okay, how do you go up against monsters like that? How do you fight those kind of battles and then come back and not have it change you, not have it have an effect on you? And so for me, that became one of the big issues as far as this book was concerned. And the other quote that's in here is actually from Porfirio Diaz, which is, "Poor Mexico, so far from God, so near the United States." And this is from chapter 1. I can find the page, I'll be all right. I won't read the whole book because I think you guys can do that. I turned my water glass in the slick circle of condensation on the smooth red lacquer of the table between us and studied the man across from me. I was afraid that if I didn't pay attention, he might disappear. The seer was like that. It was as if he simply drifted away, giving him access to places without appearing to be there, making other people's secrets his own. "You should take in some of the culture while you are here, south of the border. Go to the bullfights." Adjusting his straw pork pie hat to a jauntier angle, the hunchback smiled. "You might enjoy it." I said nothing. He looked in my general direction, the smile slowly fading. "My friend Miguel Guerra said that you are highly motivated, but that if I can talk you out of this, that I should." I still said nothing. He stared at me. "Do you speak Spanish?" I wiped the sweat from under my eyes with a thumb and forefinger and had a hard time convincing myself that it was coming up on November. Very little. He'd taken his cheap sunglasses off and placed them next to his drink. His eyes were opaque, and they wandered past me towards the knobby hills of the south that rose from the desert like a bony hand. The fingers spread to make peaks and battlements as if the mountains were at war with the flat land. That's not good, because where you are going, there will be places where no one speaks English. The seer sipped his soft drink and then batted the white cane between his knees of his threadbare pants at the exact place where his legs ended. "Your English is very good." He shrugged. "I have lived my whole life here in Juarez, and back before the new drugs, we were just a suburb of El Paso." He glanced down at his truncated legs. "Not the old drugs that did this. My mother traveled to Germany in the 60s and was given the drug that took my legs and my sight, and in the process gave me this humped back." He vaguely waved at it, sitting there like one of the battlements behind him. "Did you know that hunchbacks are seen as lucky in my country? That we bring good fortune?" "I hope that's the case. Personally, it has never brought me any providence." He paused for a moment and then turned towards the Club Kentucky, seeing it was the way it was in his mind's eye. "Juarez used to be Las Vegas before there was a Las Vegas. 24-hour bars, casinos, cabarets, brothels." The seer sipped his soda. "It is said that this club invented the margarita." He nodded. "Marilyn Monroe sat in the very stool where you are sitting now." "What do you know about Marilyn Monroe?" He smiled broadly for the first time, and I was surprised at the blinding perfection of his teeth. "My mother was here." "In this bar?" "See, January 21st, 1961. Monroe filed for divorce from Arthur Miller here in Juarez. She was with 2 men, her lawyers. They filed a suit of incompatibility of character." He leaned in confidentially. "A marvelous playwright. But she told my mother that he was hung like a cocktail sausage." "She also saw your John Wayne drink himself senseless and walk out onto the sidewalk where he fell face first, like a tree." Sensing my disinterest, the seer leaned back against the wall. "Most tourists love stories about Hollywood celebrities." "I'm not a tourist." He waved his cane toward me and changed the subject. "Can you ride a burro?" "I can ride a horse." "That does not mean that you can ride a burro. There are places where you cannot go by either horse or by car." "Fine, I'll walk." "It's not enough." He studied the problem for a while and then shook his head. "Where you are going, you will need a reason to be there, or they will kill you just to hear the sound of their weapons. I guess trying to blend in isn't much of an opportunity." He smiled and slowly began shaking his head. "Let's see, shall we?" His face became somber, and his mouth hung open as if he were testing the air between us like a snake. "From the timbre of your voice and lung capacity, I would say that you are at least 200 pounds. And from the way the floorboards creaked when you walked in, I would say 250. "I am." "From the angle of your voice, I would say that you are 6'4" or 5'5". Facial structure also affects the voice. You are of Northern European descent, so I'm guessing blondish, but considering your age, possibly gray, and with blue eyes, but not pure blue, more like blue with either green or gray. No blue. Ah. Eyes are difficult, but you will have to forgive me in that I have never actually seen blue or gray or any other color for that matter. He glanced towards the bar where he knew without seeing that the entire staff of 4 aged bartenders were watching and listening to our every word. And from the deference of the staff, I am guessing that your persona is formidable. I sighed, lightly. You are armed? Yep. With what? Colt, 1911. He shook his head at the antiquity of my sidearm. Why the 45? Because they don't make a 46. He paused for a moment and then nodded. Maybe we can use this. He tipped his head to one side. There have always been men who come here from your country, mostly for money, women, drugs, and other things too, but I propose a safari, but not for animals. For what then? There were men like yourself who come to Mexico in search of antiquities. Even now, there's a good friend of my cousin's, a Mr. Guzman, who was here searching for a particular Russian Model P made by your Colt company. Jose Guzman. I smiled, although I think his friends call him Buck. I believe that is his name. See, he was a lawman like you. You know him? A legend. He warmed to his purveyor of antique armaments idea and nodded more vigorously. This will provide us with an excuse for being in areas where we might not normally be, and it gives us a bargaining reputation without the hazards of drug money. He finished his soda. I will begin spreading the word that there is a gringo in town looking for vintage armaments and that we will be traveling around the area south of here. We? He lowered his eyes. Yours is a good cause, and I would like to help. I shook my head, but then spoke, realizing that he couldn't see my response. I can't let you do that. I appreciate your help, but if you go with me, you're likely to be killed. I'm half dead now, so what does it matter? He folded up his cane and reached out his arms like my granddaughter Lola did when she wanted to get out of her high chair. We will need a driver. I finished my water and pushed the old wheelchair, which was painted a vibrant turquoise and orange, toward the door. The cane across his knees. You're not going and I don't need a car. I have a truck parked on the other side. His turn to shake his head at me. A new truck? I don't know, it's a rental. It's blue, I think. He took charge and wheeled past me, down the bar and towards the front entrance. Too new for our purposes, and the U.S. plates are too conspicuous. We will need something that blends in, along with a driver who knows the roads. We had reached the curb when a large, honest-to-God, pink, 1959 Cadillac convertible pulled into view and slid up in front of us like a pulsating puddle of Pepto-Bismol, oozing to a stop. A young man with long hair and amazingly thick glasses got out and came around, opened the door and saluted me. Hola, Capitan. The seer gestured towards the young man. My nephew, Alonzo, our driver. I gave him my hand, Walt Longmire. Good to meet you. He lifted his uncle from the wheelchair, carefully placing him in the passenger seat, and then put the conveyance in the cavernous rear. I leaned forward, but the seer stopped me with the cane. We have not discussed the fee for our services. I figured we'd get to that. He gestured towards the nephew and stuck a hand out. $100 apiece per day, plus expenses. Driving this thing alone should cost us another $1,000. I shook his hand and noticed how strong his grip was, and then reached out and tapped the longhorn steer horns bolted to the hood. So this is the inconspicuous vehicle that we'll be taking south. Alonzo gunned the motor. This sunless, goat-fornicating, godforsaken, flat beer-tasting beast will carry us as far as the equator if need be. He grinned, and you could tell that he and the seer were from the same genetic corral. He will see you tonight at Our Lady of Guadalupe Cathedral. He threw an arm over the side of the caddy and pointed down the street. I will meet you inside a little before 9 p.m. He turned his head. Do you have any more questions? Yeah. Running my eyes over the glossy flanks of the hot pink caddy and the outrageous tail fins, the largest ever produced, I stuffed my hands in my jeans and glanced at him. How much Mary Kay did you have to sell to get this thing?